Hello and welcome everyone to the Carbohydrate Chronicles, a podcast about glycoscience and glycoscientists. In this show, via a series of interviews, we explore the world of carbohydrate science and innovation from a personal point of view. Your host today is Tamas Shahai, the member of Carbohydrate scientific team. Carbohydrates are molecules expressed on the surface of nearly all living cells, and their interaction with carbohydrate-binding proteins is critical to many immunobiological processes. Accordingly, carbohydrates are utilized as antigens in many licensed vaccines against bacterial pathogens. More recently, they have also been considered as adjuvants. Our guest today, Luigi Lay, professor of chemistry at the University of Milan, is specialized in advanced glyco-nanomedicine and carbohydrate-based vaccines, and will help us understand how carbohydrates could be used as building blocks, targetors, and further components of these complex systems. Welcome, Luigi. Thank you for accepting our invitation.
Thank you, Tamas, for the invitation.
Luigi, you have been working with carbohydrates for a very impressive 30 plus years, and you have dealt with all major aspects such as synthesis, analysis, evaluation of biological role of carbohydrates, later glycoconjugates, leading to nanotechnology and vaccines. And you have a very impressive amount of papers in this field. And you are the PI and the leader of several international consortia dealing with glycoscience. I saw that you studied as a chemist in the University of Sassari, and immediately after that, you started working in Milan, and you're still there. Are you that fond of the university and the city that your relationship is so long with Milan?
Honestly, when I moved to Milan after the graduation in Sassari, the idea was to stay in Milan just a few months, and now is more than 35 years, probably more or less. Yes, I like Milan because there are many opportunities, honestly, not only from the professional point of view, but point of view. Then I also built my family in Milan, so for me now is my second city, even if I was born in Sassari in Sardinia, so my heart is still there. But anyway, Milan is for sure my second city at the moment.
So what happened after the first few months? What made you change your mind and plan for the longer term?
The idea was after the master in Sassari, which is a small university, to have some experience in another laboratory. And therefore, I say, okay, I can test myself in another environment. The idea was at the beginning to stay in Milan 1 year because there was a fellowship available. But close to the end of this period, I received the proposal to continue with the PhD in Milan. Honestly, at the beginning, I said to all my friends, my family, okay, I never PhD for me. I want to go in a company immediately. I'm not interested at all in a PhD, in academic career, so on. And then when I was in Milan, I received this proposal. And more or less in the same time, I also received a job offer from a pharmaceutical company. In the end of this long process, I decided for the PhD. So I said to the company no, because my idea was also to have an experience out of Italy in a foreign laboratory. And this opportunity was easier in case with through the PhD and not in the company.
But if I'm hearing you well, you were still planning to go to the private sector after the PhD at that time.
Yes, because after the PhD, not immediately after, but some years later, because I started my academic career first at the SNR, which is the National Research Council in Italy, but also then I moved to university, but the position was different, but the work was the same. So it was working in a laboratory as organic chemist. Then after this, I think 3-4 years, I was contacted by another company. And we start discussing about a position as a group leader in this company. I was very attracted by this opportunity, but in the end, but in particular, then the politics of the company changed completely. They prefer to hire some from their company. So an upgrade, internal upgrade, instead of hiring an external group leader. That's why in the end was not possible. Fortunately, about 1 year later, I had the opportunity for the upgrade to become professor, and then now here I am.
Yeah, that's the key point, I think.
Yes, yes.
The others do not matter. Taking a step back to your background and childhood, I hear, I never been there, but I hear that Sardinia is one of the most beautiful places on earth. So how was your childhood there? Were you drawn to science as a kid as well, or it happened later?
Honestly, not at all. Because no, because my okay, the childhood, my interests were completely different from science or anything else. But anyway, as you know, in Sardinia is typical place for holidays, summer, especially summer holidays. And this was my major interest until this in the school. But I start to have some interest for science in the during the high school, and then I was really fascinated by chemistry and biology. Honestly, this is still my passion. I was much more fascinated by biology than chemistry. So the life science and biology was very, very fascinating for me, in not only immunology, but everything concerning the life science and the biology. Therefore, when I finished the high school, I had to decide which kind of university. My first idea was to do biology, honestly. But at that time, biology was not a very high reputation for biology, especially in Sardinia, honestly. Then, in the end, I decided to do chemistry, something more scientific from this point of view. I liked a lot, in particular, organic chemistry, but my passion for biology still remain, and that's why my field or research field in organic chemistry is very close to biology.
Yes, it's a rather interdisciplinary that you're
Yeah.
doing. It combines the two fields. You have started working with carbohydrates from the very beginning of your career. Do you remember when your first experience with carbohydrates?
Yes, because honestly, I did my master thesis in a completely different topics, not on carbohydrates. I remember that when I started my experimental thesis during the master in Sardinia, the first reaction of I did in my life was on glucose. I don't remember which one, honestly. At the moment, I don't remember the reason because my project was nothing to do has nothing to do with the carbohydrate. However, when I moved to Milan and okay, I found this opportunity in a group which worked on carbohydrates. I started to work on carbohydrates. One of the few, probably at that time, I think there were only two, three research groups in Italy working on carbohydrates. It was a really, really new topic. It was at the time that they were beginning to understand that the carbohydrates as in biology and life science, much other roles, not only the fundamental roles of structure, energy source, and so on, but other roles in molecular recognition. Therefore, they were a bit a pioneer in this field in Italy, at least.
That must have been fascinating to work on such an innovative project. Was it love for the first time? I mean, you still do work on them, so you never stopped working on carbohydrates after that?
No, honestly, I never stopped. Carbohydrates, okay, from different point of view, I extended my interest, but I would say that using also carbohydrates, for example, for catalysis or other purposes, but not only for life science, but honestly, I never stopped. Since my real passion is a biology, I want to do something in chemistry which is related to biology. Of course, in this case, you have to work on biomolecules.
After the PhD, you went as a postdoc both to Germany and Ireland. Why did you choose these labs?
Honestly, also in this case was another sliding door of my life because at the beginning I started to look for a position out of Europe, a postdoc. But fortunately, after some weeks, I heard that probably one of the most important historical group on carbohydrate chemistry, Professor Schmidt in Constance in Germany, was looking for a postdoc. And then I immediately applied, stayed there for almost 2 years. And it was fundamental for my career because for the first time I had the opportunity to work completely, I would say, alone, without a mentor, without a tutor.
Yeah, I was just about to ask if getting to Milan was always the plan after the postdoc, but then it was another door.
I didn't have plan because okay, Milan is not my city. So for me, if I had the opportunity in other city, in other places, for me were also interesting. But in this case, I had the opportunity to come back to Milan, and therefore I came back to Milan.
Luigi, what is it in your research that you enjoy most?
The main motivation is that I still believe, I strongly believe that with the carbohydrates, since I like this strict relationship between carbohydrates and health, I believe that there is still a lot to do and to discover about carbohydrates and the use of carbohydrates for not only vaccine, but also to use carbohydrate-based drugs against infectious diseases, but also it is the biggest challenge, of course, for tumors. So I believe this is the main motivation that some small pieces of knowledge of science that we can learn every day would be important to build something that can give some very completely different new drugs effective against this kind of diseases.
So you believe in the bigger picture and you understand that it's a very long and complicated road and you want to contribute
Of
to
course.
the success. I read with fascination in your career that you also worked with Rafael Darcy on some cyclodextrins. Is that right, in Ireland?
I didn't work in Ireland, but I met a researcher from Sicily, which was working on cyclodextrin, worked with Raf Darcy in Ireland before. So through this colleague, because it wasn't CNR, I had the opportunity to meet and to collaborate with Raf Darcy for a couple of years about cyclodextrin.
What do you do when you're not in the lab? In your free time, what do you like to do?
Nothing special. Sport. I like sport. Both the sport on the sofa. I need so to watch in particular, as most Italian football, of course. Not only watching on TV, but I also have a subscription for the season of my team in Milan, which is Inter. I like also playing sport. In particular, I like a lot playing tennis. Running, I don't like so much running, but is the easiest sport I can do. And also during summer, I like a lot diving.
Do you go back to Sardinia
Yes,
to
yes.
dive?
Yeah, normally, yes.
What is it that you're currently working on, or if you think about the broader picture, what are the current developments in the field of glycomics or carbohydrates that you are particularly excited about?
Of course, the topic is still the same as I told you before. So carbohydrate, the use of synthetic carbohydrates in vaccine or adjuvants. So we have different projects in this direction. But now I think the big challenge now is the antimicrobial resistance. And then I think this is another aspect where vaccines, in particular in this case carbohydrate vaccine, can play a key role to fight the antimicrobial resistance. That's why I just received 1 month ago the very good news that I applied for European grant specifically related to the synthesis of some carbohydrates of a nosocomial bacterium, which is not very known probably in the public, but it is very one of the three main causes of nosocomial infection. And this is one has a very strong antimicrobial resistance. The name is Acinetobacter baumannii. And then I started to study a bit, and this was, I think, the most exciting part in this moment is to try to find some completely new vaccine or medicine to cure this kind of infection especially caused by antimicrobial resistant pathogens. I don't know the name, but the number, but I know that the last really new innovative antibiotic was created at least 10, 15, maybe 20 years ago. So there are no new antibiotic in the world since at least 10, 15 years.
That's very true. And also the inappropriate use of antibiotics in the medical practice, also by the patients themselves,
yes,
creates
excessive use for sure.
Yes, creates this resistance. Do you think that carbohydrate-based vaccines have a better chance to fight this microbial resistance than alternative solutions?
Not specifically carbohydrate. In some cases, carbohydrates-based vaccine, because they are based on exactly the same principle of other carbohydrate-based vaccine, which are currently used in routine vaccination program. I think that vaccine in general, more generally speaking, can have a good chance, because with vaccine, the possibility to have resistance against vaccines is much more difficult. So there is the mechanism of resistance is completely different. In part, also because if the vaccine is effective, you need 2-3 administration in the lifetime, and not repeated administration like antibiotic. And also the use of vaccine can reduce the recourse to antibiotic, because if you are vaccinated, in principle, you are not infected by many other infectious diseases. This should reduce the use, the recourse to antibiotic by the patient.
This is a training network for PhD students, an international one. This is the ACI network grant.
Yes,
right?
The one I just yes.
So when are you starting?
I'm negotiating with the project officer, but the official start date should be March 24. Therefore, I want to start the recruitment process as early as possible.
Hiring is not easy nowadays, but here we have a noble goal, an innovative application. So it seems to pose a lot of challenge, and hopefully a lot of success.
There are a lot of challenge, not only because also the bacterium is not very well known, is not well classified. There are many species or serotypes. So what is clear, in my opinion, is that also the composition of this bacteria and the possible antigen that can be employed for a vaccine against the bacteria are still in progress. The discovery of this bacterium.
Yeah, it does seem challenging, and if I understand, you also need to do some basic work, some fundamental work.
Yes, we start the beginning. We don't have.
So if you listen to this podcast and you're interested in Luigi's topic, you can apply for a PhD position.
Yeah, this could be a good way.
Yeah. If you consider your whole career and look back to these 30 plus years of carbohydrate adventure, is there a specific project or accomplishment that you're particularly proud of?
Yeah, honestly, if I have to say one to answer your question, I started working on meningococcal vaccine. And then we were interested in this project. The goal was to increase the stability of the natural carbohydrates surrounding the bacterial cell of Neisseria meningitis, because the problem and the main obstacle for a vaccine against this bacterium was that the carbohydrate is very unstable, especially to hydrolysis. So at temperature higher than 5 degrees, there is a spontaneous decomposition and degradation of this carbohydrate. So the use of this carbohydrate as a vaccine was extremely difficult, especially because the vaccine in principle was supposed to be distributed in Africa. So in a region where the environmental conditions are extreme, the temperatures are usually very high, and to keep and store safely a vaccine which start decomposes over 4 degrees in Africa is not easy. The project is, can we imagine a structure which is very similar to the natural carbohydrate that can give the same kind of immune response against the natural carbohydrate, so against the bacterium, but which on the same time is much more stable in extreme environmental conditions. At the time, we proposed 2 different options, so 2 different kind of mimetics of this structure of this carbohydrate. I started, was my main project, to first of all to identify a synthetic route to prepare this kind of glycomimetics. We designed 2 different kind of glycomimetics, but there were no previous experience in the literature about the synthesis of this kind of mimetic. And then it was a very long way, honestly. But since I'm stubborn, I tried and tried. And in the end, after here, okay, the story is too long for this podcast. We could find last year, I think a couple of years ago, we could publish a very good paper where one of these glycomimetics, which was then used to prepare quite a large oligosaccharide mimetic, show for the first time very, very interesting activity in vivo against Neisseria meningitidis. There was a patent which was now is a property, was half property from University of Milan because of my work, half from for GSK now took all the patents, so both the patent from University of Milan. I don't know, maybe in some year there will be a new vaccine against meningitis based on this glycomimetic. This is my dream, would be the most exciting result of my life. But anyway, what is good in my opinion, that even if I had a lot of failures during this long journey with this glycomimetics, and sometimes people say, okay, stop working on this, change some, no, I want to try, and then in the end, trying, we could get this very interesting molecule. Then I think it was very satisfying for me.
So persistence paid off at the end. That's a very nice story. I think there is a lot to learn about it. And given that your original fascination was in biology and how you can combine and implement chemistry into real life applications, I can imagine that must be a really huge boost to your mood and motivation to create something that's very clearly applicable. And I really hope to see that application on the field. Just one last question that we're asking all the guests. If you could have dinner with a historical figure or celebrity, dead or alive, not necessarily from science, who would it be and why?
For science, the first name I have, because it was when I studied, when I was student, I was really fascinated from him, is Emil Fischer. Not because it's carbohydrate, because, okay, it's a carbohydrate, it's too easy. But when I studied, I remember the reasoning of Emil Fischer, how he could understand the structure of all carbohydrates without any kind of instrument, for me was really genius. Because only with the reasoning, only with some reaction, he could understand the structure of all aldose, glucose, galactose. So he could construct the family, the tree of all carbohydrates without NMR, without X-ray, without anything else. Completely different out of the science, but one of my, I like to have dinner and to talk because I'm always being fascinated. One is dead, is Stanley Kubrick, the director.
Okay. So you're a movie fan?
Yeah, no, for me, Stanley Kubrick is the best director in the story of cinema. Oh, I like a lot all his movies. I watched the film of Stanley Kubrick at least 3-4 times each, and even more. And the other one is still alive. Is a writer, Stephen King.
Stephen King. Oh,
yes.
Okay.
Stephen King, because I read all his books, some of them twice, and I like a lot. Stephen King is is the best way for me to go out from science life, because I like his way to describe the different person. I would say the styling of the books. I like a lot the style, I would say.
So your pick are a lot of creative guys with out-of-the-box ideas and unique personalities. We arrived to the end. I hope you enjoyed the most recent episode of Carbohydrate Chronicles, today delivered to you by Carbohydrate. We talked with Luigi Lay, professor at University of Milan today, and learned that if a door closes in your life, another door will probably open up, and following your passion will guide you to the right direction. As Luigi sees, carbohydrate-based vaccines and nanomedicines are still in their developing phase, with a lot of unknowns to discover, yet they'll surely be key elements of our future medicine. It was really great to host you today, Luigi, and talk to you. It was a very stimulating discussion. I enjoyed it a lot, and thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you very much. It was very, very good.
Thank you, Luigi, for kindly accepting our invitation and sharing glimpses of your professional and personal life, drive, and message. And thank you all for listening to this interview. Next week, in the next episode of Carbohydrate Chronicles, we'll talk with Matthew Sologub, a key figure in carbohydrate and cyclodextrin chemistry and particularly synthesis from Sorbonne University. Your host was Tomas Shahida from Carbohydrate. I hope you'll join me next week in our next episode too. See you in 1 week. Goodbye.